biggest challenge in sharing this with them today?
Oh, mostly that they've been so indoctrinated by the media. I had one student say, "Well, yeah, of course I'm a Christian, but," and then she just
Mm.
spouted all the stuff she'd gotten from the secular media, word for word. It's like they've been programmed. So
Mm.
sometimes it's hard to get a foot in the door. You know, they she finally listened to me to some degree,
Mm.
but just hear they're so close to the Christian. Even like I said, this Christian woman, young woman, student, um, was so close to the Christian view because she had only heard it presented in a very negative way. And it was very
Mm.
hard for her to even open her mind to the idea that there's a different way to express the Christian ethic than the way she'd always heard it. However, once they do hear it, and of course not all my students are that way, many of them are very really seeking. It's a Christian university, so they're seeking to be biblical in their view. But even for them, I have to tell you, they say, I just never heard it presented this way. I have to tell you, people are using the book for things other than the sexual issues. One of my graduate students had a teenage daughter who had a very severe eating disorder. She'd had to be hospitalized even.
Mm.
And she was taking her 13-year-old daughter through Love Thy Body, sentence by sentence, to help her to
Mm.
realize that God wants her to value her body. And she said to me, I wasn't helping her because I didn't have a high view of the body. Here's how one of my students put it. Growing up in the church, I was always taught spirit good, body bad. And when I say that, I use that in my lectures now, and invariably the whole audience says, "Uh-huh." Yep, that's pretty much the message we picked up too. And so this mother found out that she'd been communicating that to her daughter, and that she was not communicating to her daughter that she should value her body as a good gift from God. So she was using it for an eating disorder. Other people have contacted me, and a woman who had been sexually abused and who therefore, rejected her body, felt alienated from her body. She was using Love Thy Body. A woman who was obese and had difficulty with her body image. Um, and even a woman with rheumatoid arthritis contacted me, and she said, I was, I was reconciling myself to my, this condition, this medical condition, by saying, "Well, I am not my body."
Mm.
And she said, "Oh, I read your book," and I realized, I don't know if you remember, but in my book, I give the example of a transsexual, a
Mhm.
male to female transsexual, who was raising money on fundraising on the Kickstarter. She was raising money for a documentary which was titled "I Am Not My Body."
Yes, I remember
Do you
that.
remember that? So, so, so my friend with rheumatoid arthritis realized that she had basically picked up the secular view that was being used by transsexuals to alienate themselves, to separate themselves from their body. Here's one more thing that I do with Christians. I help them to realize that they have lost their own heritage. That if
Mm.
you go back to the early church, they faced the same denigration of the physical world that we face, but for very different reasons. The early church faced isms like Gnosticism. Right? Some of the New
Mhm.
Testament is actually written against Gnosticism, Platonism, Manichaeism. Augustine was a Manichae for a while. And all of these isms denigrated the material world as the realm of death, decay, and destruction. And Gnosticism even taught that there were several different levels of deities, of gods, and that it was the lowest level deity, an evil god, who had created this world because no self respecting God would get his hands dirty mucking about with matter. Um, and the goal of salvation was to escape from the physical world and reascend up into the ether, into the non material
Mhm.
realm. In this context, Christianity was nothing short of revolutionary because it said, for starters, the world was not created by an evil God. It was created by the supreme God, who is a good God. And therefore, his handiwork is good. And that's not obliterated by the fall. The fall is like taking a beautiful masterpiece and scribbling some magic marker on it, but you can still see the beauty shining through. And that's what we have to insist with, that the Christian worldview says you can still see the beauty of God's handiwork and the goodness of God's handiwork shining through. But was the greatest scandal at the time, historically, was the doctrine of the incarnation. The idea that that supreme deity had actually entered into the material world and taken on a physical body. The incarnation is the ultimate affirmation of the dignity of the human body. And then when Jesus was executed on a Roman cross, he did escape the physical realm, as Gnosticism taught we should aspire to do. But what did he do then? He came back in a physical body. To the ancient Greeks, this was not spiritual progress. This was regress. What they said at the time, in fact, was who would want to come back to the realm of the body? So the bodily resurrection affirms the dignity of the human body. And then at the end of time, what is God going to do? He's not going to scrap the material world as if he made a mistake the first time around. He's going to renew it and restore it, creating a new heavens and a new earth. So from the very beginning, the Apostles' Creed has affirmed the resurrection of the body. This is an amazingly high view of the material world. There's nothing like it in any other religion or philosophy. And that's what we should be communicating to people. We should be so on fire, so excited, so grateful, so full of joy that we have such a wonderful message. It should just be, that should be the tone that we approach other people with.